In this module, we're going to look at correcting any issues you discovered in the previous phases of the profit foundations. The goal here is to fix anything that is obviously broken. It's the final step in the profit foundations process, and it's vital because what we need to do is plug the holes, fix anything that's obviously broken and not working so that we can create a solid foundation to build upon. We don't want to press on and apply our 10% wins and our tactics in the profit growth if we're building on an unstable foundation. The other reason to go through this step and correct any issues that we've identified is it's a great way to get some easy wins. Very often, any issues that you've identified earlier on in the process, if you fix them, can easily bring up your numbers and get you some quick wins, some extra profit going through your business. What we're going to do in this module, first of all, and most importantly, is fix things that we've identified in the capture and calculate phases. So we might have identified things that we are missing measurements on, or systems that are broken or that are just not functioning quite properly. Things that were in place that just aren't happening. What we're not going to do is create anything new. We're going to save that for the profit growth practice and the create phase. We're also not going to try and improve anything. So if we saw an opportunity for an improvement, came up with an idea, again, that's a profit growth activity. It's a new idea for a 10% win, something that we can do to improve things. So we're not going to address either of those things in our profit foundations. Remember, our goal here is just to create a stable, solid foundation. It's not to try and apply any growth tactics, and it's not to try and create anything new within our business. As we covered in the introduction to this phase of profit foundations, the goal of this phase is to correct any issues that we found during the other earlier phases of the process. And the first thing we need to do in order to correct these issues is to find them, to identify them, and to properly classify them. Now, the first part of that is to review any notes that we made while we were going through the capture and calculate phases. As we were capturing our current actions for each of our 7 levers and calculating the values, we should have been on the lookout for any issues or any gaps or anything that was broken or missing as we were doing each of those phases. Now, hopefully you made some notes and you can go back and review those notes so that you can see if there's anything that you can easily correct. But it's important that when you do this review that you classify the issues that you identified, because some issues are not the ones that we want to correct in this phase. They require more work, or they are new things that are to do with growth. What we're looking for here is just gaps, issues, things that are missing that if we correct them will enable us to create that solid foundation for growth, and also potentially to give us some quick wins. The classifications that we use, we have 4, and I'm going to explain them to you now, and we're giving them very specific names. And then in the next lesson we're going to talk about what we do with each of those classifications. So as you review your notes from capture and calculate, look for these 4 different types of issues. And the first type of an issue is one where you're not currently doing anything for that lever. So this would be something when you're capturing, you would find this as an issue because you're not currently taking any action at all towards improving that lever. And that is what we call a blank. So if you review your notes from your capture phase and you find anywhere where there's nothing to capture, there's no current actions being undertaken, then you can mark that down as a blank. Next up is an issue where you're not measuring that lever. Either you're not measuring the results of any actions you're taking, you're just literally not currently aware of the metric right now for whatever reason. That's something that's going to turn up in the calculate phase, and if you find one of these issues, then you can mark that down using the name blind, because you're not measuring, you have no visibility. So that's a blind. The third issue you might identify, and you might identify this either in capture or calculate, but it does show up most often when you're calculating, is that you have some existing system or process or activity that you had started to do, but that has stopped working for whatever reason. It might be that someone has stopped implementing a policy. It might be that a new member of staff just never got trained to implement that policy. It might be that an automated system got switched off or has just stopped working for whatever reason. Whatever has caused this, if you identify something where there is an existing system that has stopped working, then that we label as broken. And finally, the fourth classification of issue that you might find is not really an issue, but it's where, as you've worked through, you're capturing your actions, you're calculating your values, and you've had a new idea, a way to improve an existing system or an existing activity. It's not really an issue, it's a gap or an opportunity. And we would label this as better. So you want to improve something and make it better. That's obviously distinct from the other three. Better means it's already working, it's working okay, but there's an improvement. If it's actually not working or not up to standard, then it's broken. So there is a difference there. So those four classifications: you're not doing anything is a blank, you're not measuring something is blind, it's an existing system that stopped working, that's broken, or you've had a new idea and that's better. So your action now is to go back through, review the work that you did in Capture and Calculate, any notes that you made, and classify the issues that you found in one of those four ways. In the previous lesson, we looked at finding and classifying the issues from the previous phases of Profit Foundations. Now we need to understand what we're going to actually do with those issues. Whether we're going to correct them during this phase or whether they've got to be passed forward into the profit growth process, which comes after we've established a solid foundation. And the way we do that is through the classifications that we gave. Now those classifications we call the 4 Bs, and we need to triage the work that we've done using those classifications to decide whether what we're going to do now is correct the issue or pass it forward into the create phase of profit growth. So a reminder, the 4 Bs are blank, blind, broken, and better. And very simply, to remind you again what each one is, blank is where you're not doing anything to improve that lever. Blind, you're not measuring that lever, whether the results of activities or just not in general measuring the lever. Broken means that you've found an existing system but some part of it has stopped working. And better is where you've had a new idea to improve something that you're already doing. For each one of these 4 Bs, there is a clear decision about whether we'll take that issue and pass it forward into the create phase of profit growth, or whether we'll correct it now to establish that solid foundation for growth. If you've identified one of the issues as a blank, where you're not currently taking any activity, well, that means that you've got to implement something new. Anytime you've got to implement something new, then it becomes a create activity. So that needs to go forward to profit growth. If you identify an issue as blind, you're not measuring right now, well, we can correct that. Usually measuring something, putting some measurements in place is a small issue, small activity, a small extra step that you can take now. But whatever it does take, it's vital that we do it now because we must have those baseline numbers. The data that goes into the calculate phase must be complete. We must have numbers for all 7 levers, otherwise we can't move forward confidently and establish our baseline from where we get our 10% wins. So if it's a blind, we need to correct that straight away. If you found an issue where there's an existing system and that system has stopped working, and so therefore you found something that's broken, well, that's something, again, we should correct right now. We don't want to build on top of something that's not functioning properly. But also, this is the biggest area for a potential win, where we're looking at low-hanging fruit. It's something that was already working, and usually it's a very simple step to correct it, whether it's reinitializing the training of our staff, reviewing that training, reviewing our procedures, or simply turning some automated system back on. Very often these corrections are simple, but can give you big wins for a very small effort. So that broken items should be corrected in this phase. And finally, if while you've been working through your 7 levers, clarifying, capturing and calculating, you've come up with an idea for something that you could do better or something completely new that you could do to improve a lever, again, that comes under the heading of new work, new effort, and so it becomes an activity that we put into the create phase of profit growth. To help you, first of all, classify any issues that you found, and secondly, then triage those issues to work out whether you're going to correct them during your Profit Foundations work or whether you're going to pass it forward as a create activity into profit growth. We've created this guide sheet for you. It lists out the 4 B's: blank, blind, broken and better. It's got definitions for each of those 4 classifications and a clear indication of whether you take that issue and pass it to create, or that you need to correct it right now to establish your strong foundation for growth. You can download this worksheet from this lesson and print it out or keep it on your screen as a reference to help you make those decisions. Now that you understand the principles involved in correcting any issues and the importance of this final phase of the Profit Foundations process, your exercise is to identify any issues, so to find them in the work that you've done in capture and calculate, classify those issues into one of the 4 B's, and then the issues that you've identified as either blind or broken, you need to correct them in order to establish that solid foundation to move forward.